Thanks very much, Margaret. Joined by the House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, one of the busiest people in D.C. these days. Here at the American Bankers Association conference, but healthcare is certainly topic number one for you. The CBO numbers that came out today, how do they change the vote count for Democrats as you consider this bill perhaps as early as this weekend?
Well, clearly, Peter, all of us were very concerned about the deficit and where this bill would put us. The good news that we got from CBO late last night was that they're scoring this bill as saving about $130 billion deficit reduction over the next 10 years and $1.2 trillion in the second 10 years. That's the biggest deficit reduction bill that I think any member will vote on in their careers. So this is a very, very important step forward. I think a lot of members will be much more comfortable with this bill based upon that savings.
Do you have a more accurate vote count at this point, a whip count as to whether you have the votes, the 216 needed to pass this? Will there be blue dog Democrats in particular who may be more likely to vote for this legislation because of this deficit
I think blue dog Democrats are going to be very pleased with this deficit analysis by the CBO. You know, saving somewhere between $1.3 and $1.4 trillion over the next 20 years is very significant, given the fiscal posture we see ourselves in, and given the absolute essential nature of bringing down healthcare costs, which have such a big impact on the deficit itself. So, yes, I think they'll be pleased with that. That doesn't necessarily mean that every one of them will say, "Okay, I'm going to vote for it."
216, sir?
We'll get there.
You'll get there.
We'll get there.
And let me ask you this, that process is part of the equation here. When will you get there? Will it be a Sunday vote? And could that affect the president's trip to Indonesia? He needs to sign some of this legislation to have this process take place.
Peter, I don't think signing is a problem. We can get it to him anywhere in the world. And once he signs it, then it's eligible to be considered by the Senate and under the process that we're pursuing. So I don't think that's a problem, whether he's here or he leaves for Indonesia. He's delayed his trip. Been talking to members, working it hard, feels very strongly about this. I'm sure he's heartened by the numbers that we saw today in terms of this big deficit reduction that this bill pretends. But my expectation is we're going to vote on this sometime Sunday afternoon. We have indicated we want to give 72 hours notice for the amendments. The bill, of course, that we'll be voting on, the Senate bill, and then the amendments to the Senate bill. The Senate bill has been on the World Wide Web, if you will, on the online for over about 3 months now. So people have had full time to review that bill. The amendments, we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to see those as well.
Let me ask you quickly about regulatory reform, if I could. I know you spoke to the bankers here. Many of them opposed to what they see coming out of Congress right now. Your thoughts about that? Is it possible we could leave this Congress without a deal?
I hope not. I hope that that's not the case. What we saw, in my opinion, during the 8 years of the Bush administration was a philosophy that you just take the referee off the field. And very frankly, we took the referees off the field, or if they were on the field, they weren't watching. And we saw financial chaos result, and the deepest recession that we've seen in our lifetimes result, and the necessity to come up with extraordinary sums of money to make sure that we didn't go into a deep depression, as opposed to simply this great recession that we're in. So I think clearly we need to make sure that this doesn't happen again. We need to make sure that the regulators are on the field, that the consumers are protected. And what I told the bankers was, we want to work together to make sure that the referee doesn't undermine the business and the profits and the growth in our economy that result, but we want to make sure that it operates fairly and that we minimize risk. And very frankly, when we have institutions, none of which I think are probably represented in that room, that get too big to fail, that control too much of the economy, and the consequence of their failure is dire to not only our own economy, but economies around the world, we need to be able to take action.
You willing to give a little ground on the Consumer Protection Agency?
Well, I think we need to have consumers protected. What I said was, in response to the press, we passed it in one form. Senator Dodd's talking about it in another. We need to resolve those differences. What I urge the bankers to do, to come together with us and understand there needs to be consumer protection. There needs to be a focus on the consumers, not just the financial institutions themselves. But if we work together, I think we can do that in a way that is positive for consumers and positive for bankers.